not winning 90% of your new business because you have some sort of incredible value.
I'm going to take a bit of a different angle.
We got a budget this big. I'm going to give it to you because you have a really killer plan.
You give a Red Bull to a turtle, what do you expect?
I think that's a dead turtle.
So let's move on to...
Rick.
Cheers.
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 Does your current premium finance company lock you into long-term agreements? That's because they don't want you talking to us. At IFS, we win your business the good old-fashioned way, with customer service. I know you don't always have to use a premium finance company, but when you do, you should use IFS. Cheers.
Hi there, and welcome to another episode of the Digital Insurance Pint Podcast. I'm your host, Tom Reed, and as always, I'm joined by my colleagues, Steve Earle, CEO of Cheap Insurance.
Hello.
Never fails to amuse me. Adam Mitchell, CEO of Mitch Insurance.
Hello.
And Jeff Roy, CEO of Excalibur Insurance.
Welcome, Pinters.
And today we are super pleased to be joined by Dario Battista, CEO of iSure. Dario, welcome.
Hello, guys. Thank you. Thanks for the invite. Happy to be here.
Great to have you here. Let's get things rocking and start off with our favorite question. As us being all music people, or at least half of us anyway, what's your favorite Canadian band or artist of all time?
I think Tom knows the answer. Rush. I'm a big Rush fan. They grew up in my neighborhood. The first drummer of Rush went to my grade school, probably used the same drum kit I used in grade school. So, roots are there for sure.
What musical instrument do you play, Dario?
I am a drummer.
Wow.
I was a trombone player for about a month. Couldn't hit an F. Traded with the drummer. Never looked back.
Awesome. Now, when you're not digitizing insurance, what do you do in your spare time?
Right now, I'm drumming a lot, believe it or not. That obviously family, we love travel, that kind of thing. I bike ride a bit, but music for me is the big thing. Seeing bands, listening to bands. I'm getting into the jazz scene in Toronto, checking out that kind of thing. That's my thing.
Awesome. And maybe tell all the listeners your daughter's in a special play this summer.
Yeah. So my youngest is in Windsor. She's at the University of Windsor. She's a drama major, and she's in Romeo and Juliet, which is on now in Windsor. So anyone in Windsor, go check it out. She is Juliet.
When you're at an insurance conference, Dario, tell the listeners, what's your drink of choice?
Yeah, it depends on my mood, but my go-to would be a vodka soda simply because they can't mess it up.
Awesome. And tell me, what's the best thing you've ever smoked on your smoker?
Oh, boy. I did a really good pork butt for 18 hours.
All right, 18-hour pork butt. Gotta love it. Now, share with the listeners, what book are you reading or podcast are you listening to right now?
You guys.
All right, good. At this point, we're going to pass you back over to Tom.
Thanks for the intro there, Jeff and Dario. So let's talk about iSure now. So where did iSure come from? You weren't always the principal of iSure, as I recall.
I've always been about building. The whole reason why I got into insurance was because I just wanted to build a business bigger than myself. It was that simple. Insurance happened to be the opportunity. I was coming out of business school. I did an MBA at Schulich, and I didn't really want to work downtown. Most of my family were self-employed. That's what I knew. Family friend had a little brokerage, so I started there basically. And, kitchen table insurance, as I call it. Starting from $1. I'm a first generation in this business, and writing home and auto policies at night and then manually quoting them during the day and calling people. And that was my routine. And so I built a pretty decent personal lines practice, and then I focused on commercial, and I built a pretty good size commercial practice, which was the majority of my business. And then I clustered with a few other gentlemen, and that was the name of that organization was Belpac Capri. And I created their commercial department and all of that. And we built that out. And then the day came when, it was a five-person cluster, and two of them wanted a different direction than the other three wanted to go. So I led the other three, and there was, we had an easy sort of separation agreement, so it wasn't difficult to do, and we did that. And then at that point, it was really a question of how do I grow this business? What does that look like? I was buying one of the partners out, one of the other two that came with me. So I needed to finance that. I was inheriting a portfolio that was, a business that was designed to carry, $10 million in GWP at the time, and we probably had about 7 million renewing that year because two of the guys were going with their portfolios. And then just looking around and thinking about how do we grow, that's where the iSure concept came from. It was more about rethinking the business model around distribution at the time. And you have to be in context. This is 2006 that I'm going through this process, right? And the way to grow your business is, the producer model, which is more of a traditional model. There was acquisition that was available. All these things were available. And really, iSure grew out of the idea of what I had observed in the travel business, which is where my family was. My dad was in the travel business, did quite well in that business. They sold those businesses in 99 and in 2000. But what I observed in that industry was distribution, sort of where it went with Expedia. And our industry wasn't really getting what those models were. They weren't direct models. They were travel agencies. They were no different than what I was as a kid working for my father in the travel agency. And so I thought, are there learnings there that I could bring and rethink the model a little bit? So really what we are at the end of the day was, most traditional brokerages rely on producers to bring in the business, but the brokerage itself doesn't own that relationship with the customer. So I thought, is there a way to put a brand out there, back it up with really great people so that the brand starts attracting the business, right? And that's how it started. iSure, was a name I came up with sitting in my den, and then it was, I looked it up and it was available, so I snagged it and traded it and all that stuff. And we started off down this journey of trying to figure out what does that model look like, where you're generating business through your brand as opposed to, more of the traditional model. And effectively, that's what we do today. And it's been a journey of 15 years. It's just been constant evolution as we've gone along.
So, Dario, your digitization strategy is a little bit different compared to other modern brokers. Can you break that down for us a little bit?
Yeah, I guess it has its origins in terms of how we started. We started off buying leads largely, right? So to understand the market and understand what acquisition costs look like, understand what the back end needed to look like. And we spent a lot of time doing that. It was about 2 years we did that. And at the same time, we were building out our capabilities on the other side. And it had two paths. One was paid, so understanding paid and doing that side of the business and doing it well. A little bit of SEO, and then it morphed heavily into social as well. So we do a lot of social as well. And so when in on January 1st of 2010, we cut off all leads. Because we had built up that capability in the background that we could generate the business ourselves. We were able to benchmark it relative to what it would cost us to buy leads. And then we just ran with that and then constantly evolving and tweaking and building it from that foundation.
This is familiar. We've talked about this before, needing to buy leads when you're starting.
Yeah. So that was a big thing for us early on. I needed to understand, could you do this with a traditional model in the background? Did you need a call center? What did that call center need to look like? How did you have to structure your people? Did you need different technology internally, new processes, all of this type of thing, right?
So you got rid of buying leads. You still have paid SEO and social. Have the sources by, say, the percentage. Has that changed over time? Are you less social than you were, or more social? How are the weightings going over time?
Yeah, so I would say we have a large social presence. We haven't been flexing that muscle as much in the last couple of years. We still use it. I do want to continue focusing on that. One of the challenges we had on the social side was really tracking the effectiveness of the marketing. So getting it right down the funnel, right? So we've just brought in some new technology. We just launched it, and it's going to enable us to do that. So we'll be able to get back into the social game. Social, there are two sides, right? There's the organic side. And yes, we're there. We post all the time. We have a very active page. We have 30,000 followers. Like, we've got that happening. But social has become very much a pay for play environment, right? And so we started doing more of the pay early on, but I couldn't really attribute that effectively. We're going to be able to, so we'll probably get back into that game.
Do you track your close ratio separate by source?
Yeah, we do now. It was harder to do before. We did it. We were able to make assumptions, and think about it by proxy. We were able to figure out ways to get around it. But now we'll have more of a direct way to do that.
Again, you're one of the brokers like Adam that I track to see how your ranking is improving, how much traffic you're getting. And we can kind of surmise based on, we've got metrics and we're tracking 20 of the top brokers across Canada to see how they're growing. So I've obviously seen that you get a ton of traffic to iSure with all the things you're doing organically. So bravo. I know how hard, we all on this call know how hard that is to do. It's like the heavy lifting versus taking steroids, which is, as Steve said, pay to play. I say you got two land. You got land you own, which is organic, and you got rented land, which is pay to play stuff, right? And we all want to have better owned land, right?
Yeah, it's interesting. My approach is a little bit different. I do agree with you. I think our SEO game has really grown over the last few years, and that was by design. We became more focused on the SEO side. We were always good at it, but I wouldn't say we were great at it. And we started investing more resources and strategy around that side of the business. The paid piece still remains, in my mind, very effective, but you have to really be able to track the costs associated with it, like what your acquisition cost is at the end of the day, right? And you really have to understand everything behind that funnel, behind that closing, and what that looks like. I don't think it's any surprise that even the biggest SEO plays still pay and still do paid, right? And I don't think you can get away from paid. I think it's a reality. Google's not in the business of giving away stuff, and so paid will always be there. In my view, to be effective in digital, you have to have the SEO side, but you also have to have a really good paid play for longevity. That's sort of my view on it.
I'll jump in. You can agree or disagree on it, but I'd be willing to bet you agree. I don't know a single person achieving any modicum of success in SEO that isn't spending a relative shit ton to achieve that. So I'll go to an overarching statement. There are no free leads. Every lead has a cost, and how good you run an attribution model to tracking that, whether it be your team that's generating the SEO, your team and your spend to Google for paid, or even your time spent in the local parade to win that business card or something. Like, all of it added up to a resource going in to generate it. And some of them are more scalable than others, but it's all, so it's cool to hear that you're tracking it and you can figure out your ROI. But that's my sense on it.
Yeah, no, you make a very good point, Adam. I mean, the reality is paid SEO costs money. You have to pay writers. There's technology to track this stuff. There's investment in SEO. There's no question about it. But I don't think you can stand just on that one leg. Let's put it that way. I think maybe you could have gotten away with that in the past. I don't think you can anymore. And with SEO, I look at SEO as being more of a blunt instrument, to be honest with you. Like, I see it as a blunt marketing instrument. The paid tends to be the more precise side of the business. So SEO will gain awareness. I see it very much as a brand play. I see it as a credibility play and all of that. But ultimately, the sort of drilling down on the specific client you're looking for, where you're looking for them, when you're looking for them, all of that, you can't achieve that level of precision with SEO. You just cannot. So that's why you really need both. I don't think you can live in just paid anymore, and I don't think you can live in SEO anymore. I think you need to have both.
I'm curious that if you can share what are you using to measure your social now?
Yeah, so we brought in HubSpot. We decided on HubSpot. We held off making this decision for a while. And it was largely because we were really working through our new business process, and we're trying to figure out, there's HubSpot, there's Salesforce, there's a whole, other ones out there. What need did we really have, and where would that investment dollar be best spent? And we got to a point where HubSpot was clearly the best option for us where we were. We didn't need a sales management tool. We had a really good sales process. It would help, but it wouldn't change the game. Where HubSpot really works for us is in that attribution, tying our marketing right to our sales funnel, right? So it fills in that gap that we had, and is it's already providing really interesting insights on what we're doing and how we're managing the business.
So Dario, let's switch gears here for a second. So I was trolling your website recently, and one of the values that you show on your website is the fact that you're independent. And there's very timely. There's a Canadian Underwriter just had a panel. We actually have an episode on broker independence. So I'm interested in your perspective on it. Why do you put independence on your website?
It is who we are. We are independent, so we are fully independent. So it's a matter of also transparency in terms of being genuine in terms of what you are as an organization. And our organization is completely independent. So we have no relationships financially with anyone outside of the owner, effectively. This is my business, and so there's no other relationship other than that. And I think that just from a positioning perspective, I think it speaks to who we are. Do I think customers care? I think customers care about you picking up the phone, to be honest with you. I think customers care about the service they get. That's what customers really care about. And you have to remember when you put those things on a website, you're speaking to your customer, but you're speaking to a whole bunch of stakeholders as well, right? You're speaking to your insurance companies, you're speaking to your suppliers, you're speaking to prospective employees, you're speaking to a whole gamut of people. It's not just for the customer. So independence really speaks to, it's just to tell the world this is what we are.
To keep rolling with that on what customers care about, you have a cool section of your site that compares iSure against other distributors. And I think because of our audience, we don't really have anyone listen to this thing that's the general public. We have a bunch of insurance geeks and executives listening to it. So we can also say that it is a bit of a proxy of comparing brokers against other distributors and things. And why do you think that's important? And have you had customers sort of comment on it and notice?
Well, so that chart that you're talking about, I created that, 10, maybe it was one of the first charts I created. And that chart really was an exercise I went through to try and understand from a market perspective, where do we fit? What is it we're doing? How do we fit with these competitors, right? And that was a chart I'd used personally to vet out the marketing plan and where we would take the business and sort of the direction, the fundamentals of the strategy. And then I thought, well, it's quite useful. So I just, cleaned it up and I put it on the site, and it's been there ever since. Customers, when you do get to have the conversation with customers, especially if they're a little more sophisticated, they do care. I'm amazed. Look, I'm talking to MPs here, right? They have no clue what we do. They really don't understand the dynamics of how insurance is distributed. And, the ability to have a conversation with a client to say, the duty of care that we have is to you, whereas an agency relationship is completely different, is something they don't realize. But when they do, they do pause and listen.
You mentioned some really good, insightful things about running, digital, basically paid ads with your SEO strategy. How can you tell if you're marketing when you're doing some brand awareness, how much of what you're willing to pay over what the actual cost of lead is worth it to get your brand out there?
Well, part of the challenge, I think, is, the concept of unaided brand awareness. The market is so massive. I think that's a hard one for any of us at our scale, and probably a lot of companies to achieve without a whole different set of marketing mix, right? For us, I look at the brand play, I look at the SEO play as, just getting our message out there in terms of, a lot of blog writing and things like that. And then the brand play comes into the funnel as they come down. So once they've engaged with you, and how do you try to get your message in front of them? Right. And in terms of measuring, I don't see these as individual points. I don't think you can look at the digital marketing side like you do buying a lead. I think it's more of a customer journey, and you have to understand that. We get a lot of phone calls today that are not attributing to ads. Well, clearly they saw us somewhere. So they saw us before we launched HubSpot. So we'll get insights on what those calls, where they came from over time, right? So that's sort of the answer to that. It's part of a much bigger mix. I mean, gone are the days of, I'm going to spend 30 grand and put radio spots and let them run for 3 months and see what happens. It's just, there's so many layers to this stuff, and it's so sophisticated. You really have to stay on top of it. You can't do it from this corner of your desk anymore.
Do you think the days gone past your playbooks? I mean, you have some critical size, momentum, and learning, but could a new brokerage start up and try and run your playbook today, or do you think those days are behind us?
I should ask you that question. I think we both know the answer. It's tough. It would be very difficult. I mean, we have the advantage of Google knowing our site for 15 plus years. It's always been an active site. It's never been put in the penalty box. It's always been, kept its nose clean and what have you. And what we find is when we really started exercising our SEO muscle, it responded very quickly, which was great. And so I think starting from scratch is a major, major investment these days. I think it's and the challenge, I think, for most brokers is they dabble in it. They go in for a little while, they don't like the results, and they get out. If you're going to go in, you have to go all in. That's the other thing I did 15 years ago. I was all in. Like, we were no longer producers. That was done. We became a corporate model. All the business got put into the corporate, even my own portfolio, everything. And if that didn't work for you, there wasn't, you weren't part of where we were going. So it's not that we built a digital side unit. We became that entirely, right? And that's our organization today.
You burn the boats and there's no going back, right?
Pretty much, yeah.
So Dario, quick question. Well, maybe it's not quick. You've created a really good digital storefront, and you've done a tremendous job at that over the years. Do you still feel like the back shop is analog because we're dealing with suppliers that aren't connecting to us in ways that they should?
There's no question. I mean, the way we interact with our insurers has gotten better, but it's nowhere near where it should be. We've invested a lot in our own processes internally, in terms of documenting processes, creating processes, automating certain parts of it, like all of that. And we continue to invest in that. We then get to the interaction with the insurer, and we're faced with a portal, or we're faced with this, or we're faced with that. And that clearly is, a pain point for us. And I think anyone who's trying to do distribution en masse realizes that. But we look at it, we try to get some opportunity out of it. So we use those, we use them for part of our training and things like that. Like, we're able to do some things with them. But the truth is, I would like to see the industry just get more serious about the inefficiencies associated with the way we transact business today. I mean, there's been a lot of work done, though. I mean, the policy downloads, all of those things, the policy, the ability to deliver your policies electronically, no more paper, all of those things are positive, but we still have a long way to go.
So very pointed question. Could you sell more insurance for your suppliers if they were more efficient to deal with?
If I wasn't investing as much money in dealing with that, absolutely. It's 100 cents on the dollar, right? I only have so much money to invest. And if it's all going towards inefficient process, I can't invest in marketing. And sort of in the digital world, it's scalable. I mean, you could double the business tomorrow.
Do you have a grasp on, you've been in this for quite a while, but on the escalating curve of lead generation costs, and I guess the next leap is where that goes for acquisition cost?
Yeah, so I mean, lead generation cost has gone up. We see that cost of clicks and all that stuff. I mean, that's all more expensive. We did see through the fall that acquisition costs went up. And I think that was a function. There are a lot of components to it, right? A lot of that comes down to closing rate, down to the quality of the business, and all of those things. We have seen it come down quite a bit this calendar year. And we're actually in a really good spot from that perspective, but we're paying more per click than we did before. We're just more efficient at the closing and the bottom end of that funnel.
We've alluded a few times to the fact that you slash iSure are one of the original digital brokers, right? You were part of that early adopter curve from some time ago, but you're not Hub, you're not BrokerLink, you're not Westland. So even though you're a leading broker, you're not one of the the brokers that has revenues that starts with a B. Have you seen your relationship with carriers affected by that? Like 15 years ago when you started, there probably weren't any billion-dollar brokerages, or they were close to it maybe, but now there's multiple brokerages with multiple billions in premium revenue. Have you seen any shift in your relationship with carriers because of this emergence of these mega brokers?
When I think about my history and what I've observed, I mean, carriers have always focused on giving a little more time to their bigger brokers. And arguably, there are probably more bigger brokers back in the day than there are today. There are fewer bigger brokers, if you get my drift, because they've just become massive.
They're just fewer but bigger, bigger, bigger. Yes.
A lesson I was taught. Someone said to me early on in my career, and it's shaped the way I approach my companies since day one. He said to me, this would have been in '94. There are 10 million customers in Ontario you want to do business with, and 10 insurance companies you'd like to do business with. Don't mess that up. He didn't use the word mess, but you get the point of it.
Yeah, we get the drift.
And his point was, what I took from that is, for me to be effective, I need my partners. So I've always really, really focused on being a really good partner for my carriers, and it's paid off over the years. Do we have the same seat at the table as some of the mega brokers? No, but do I get a seat at the table? Yeah. I tend to not overextend myself with insurance companies. Like, I really spend a lot of time and effort managing that and really thinking of it as a partnership. The latest hard market cycle was really wasn't a bad time for us, to be honest with you. Like, we did quite well, especially commercial, over the last few years. But that was sort of, we were fortunate that we went in on solid footing, right? Now, look, that stuff can change overnight. We all know that. And we're much more at risk with smaller portfolios than bigger portfolios. And so we probably have to be a little more careful than larger players would need to be. But notwithstanding, I think if you do a good job and you're giving consistent results, and you're really not getting in the way and causing problems, I've found that, generally speaking, the relationship has been strong with all the carriers.
Dario, what positive changes have you seen in the industry in the last few years? I know we went through COVID and you saw a lot of things hyper accelerate, but anything jump out in the last 3 years?
It's a couple of things from my perspective. I mean, digital is no longer a dirty word. Although I do agree with you guys, modern brokerage is a better way to characterize it. Digital is no longer a dirty word. People are embracing technology more than they have in the past. I think they're beginning to understand what technology is. It's not some silver bullet that I'm going to buy a piece of software and away I go. I think people who do that, or companies that do that, are always sadly mistaken. It is part of a much bigger picture. And although not quite, but the idea of centralization in call centers and finding efficiencies through that kind of thing, the attitude around that is beginning to change too.
Some other things that have changed over time, and you said digital is no longer a dirty word. I'd love to hear your comments on how the producer model has been reborn under the title of branch model or franchise, and also clusters kind of went the way of the dodo bird, but is that starting to come back and make more sense in this world of scale is everything?
I think there's lots of value in having local brokers, but I do not think that the how do I put this? I think that for the drive for efficiency and where the world is going, the consumer, the kind of service a consumer wants, they will struggle to get it in that kind of model. And I'll say it this way. When a big metric we use in our office, and it's something that all our teams are managed on, our managers are bonused on meeting these targets, is a religious sort of KPI that we do, is 95% of our calls have to be answered in 30 seconds. Period. You don't call and get a voicemail if you call us. Shouldn't happen. Happen 5% of the time, perhaps, if that. And so, that becomes a very difficult proposition to offer if you have sort of this multiple franchise model. When a customer calls, the ability to have a consistent process, no matter who touches that file, is something that becomes very difficult to manage on a decentralized type of model. And I think the consumer is expecting that kind of service more and more. There will always be a segment of the market that will want to be local. I don't think that changes. I was saying to a broker, he was a local, smaller broker in a town outside of Toronto. He was talking about how he did digital marketing, and he was getting all this kind of business he didn't want. And I asked him, why are you doing digital marketing? Like, why? He says, well, you're supposed to. And I said, well, what's your business? Like, forget the digital marketing. Like, what is your business? He says, well, we're local and all this stuff. So my comment to him, because what he did was he just went to a marketing firm, and yeah, they're going to sell you all. That's what they do, right? You guys have all been down that road. You know. I said, if I'm you, I'm sponsoring the Kiwanis Festival. I'm in the Santa Claus Parade. I'm captain of the local area, right? That's what I'm doing. I'm not investing on the digital side. The challenge with that model is when you start trying to scale that model is how do you control it, right? How do you find efficiencies in it? How do you control that model? And I believe that at scale, a centralized approach is a better approach. To be honest with you, that's my opinion. Because we can provide a consistent user experience to anyone who calls iSure, no matter where they are in the province. I don't think you get the same thing with others. And then the other problem you run into is everyone aligned with the same goals that drives the business forward? That's one of the reasons why clusters fall apart. I mean, I was in a cluster. Everyone would talk about, yeah, we're going to do this, and then all five would walk out and do what made sense for them, right? It's just that's what it is. And so now you're just multiplying that issue, by 100 or 200, and it becomes very, very difficult.
So this rolls us back on track to like, what other negative changes have you seen happen in the industry in the last few years?
One of the negatives, I think, as an industry, we've lost a little bit of our creativity on how to develop business. I think we're not willing to take chances on doing things the way maybe we did in the past. I think that all the capital that's come in has come into for buying and consolidation. I think that's going to need to be dealt with at some point. Like, someone has to produce new business, someone has to produce new markets, new opportunities. And I think we've lost a little bit of that over time. And I'd like, that's a bit of a negative. You talk to a lot of players, they all want to buy the sure thing. No one's actually thinking about how do we create something new. And the worry on that is if we don't do it as a distribution, someone else might. I think it's something to think about, right? And it's not going to be an individual piece of technology that's going to come and do that, but it's more going to be a willingness to want to put capital in that world.
So Dario, what do you think it will take to succeed in the future of broker distribution, the future of insurance distribution? How do you see brokers thriving and surviving down the road?
I sort of talked about this in the past, where I think we're in sort of this world of the rise of professional management. I think we're getting to a point as an industry where running a brokerage isn't about being a really good producer or being a really knowing your product or that type of thing, as much as it is about being able to build a company. I think that is more so. That's a big part of to be successful. And the pillars around that, I mean, is strategy, really mapping out strategy, understanding how to build strategy and do those kinds of things. Building really good processes, documenting your processes, having consistency, understanding what they are, constantly review them, constantly learning and innovating that side of it. Thinking about the technology to enable all of that, right? It's not just getting technology for the sake of technology, but what are those technology pieces that will push things forward for the organization. Capital. I think brokerages need capital to do this. This costs money. This is not and so that speaks to having access to capital or running a business that can get access to capital, right? And whatever that looks like, and building sort of a culture of reinvesting in growth and innovation and people. Like you need to foster and build really good people, both as frontline people, leaders, all of those things, right? And understanding and getting the people, when it comes down to people, it's really about finding people the right fit in the right place. When you look at our business surprises a lot of people because half of our revenues is commercial. A lot of people don't realize that. And we do have an account executive, so we do have producers, believe it or not. But they're producers focused on strictly commercial, mid and large commercial, because we provide them all the back end support to take care of the other stuff. Because we have the call center that manages all the personal lines leads, and we have someone who takes care of the VIP client, and we can deal with the small business piece through our call center. And so, understanding all of those pieces and the kind of talent you need, and where do you develop that talent, how do you develop that talent, I think is critical. I want to make sure that I didn't come off as anti-producer, guys, because I'm not anti-producer. I just think that the producer of the future looks very different than the producer of today. And I think the producer of the future adds value when they're talking about high, like more technical, where the advice piece is more important. If that producer is just selling home and auto insurance, I think that's the producer model that will be challenged in the future.
I think what I heard you say, Dario, was that the skill set that is best fit with the different classes of business, let's call it, generic business, whether that's home and auto or mass business, home and auto, small business, that's becoming a more automated call center-y kind of thing. And the producer, the account executive, is now required at a higher end of the scale, whether that's technical or premium or higher end of the scale. It's the more complex business still needs the human, both from a technical perspective, a relationship perspective, management perspective. Whereas a lot of the less complex business can and should be automated or put into a call center and mass managed, not individually managed. That's what I heard you.
Yeah, no, and that's exactly it. I think that people want to talk to people, so I prefer the call center. We talk to everyone. I think that's critical in our industry because of the nature of the product we sell. I don't think you can just put it online, someone's home and auto insurance. At least we're not there yet. I'm not saying it might not happen in the future, but I don't think we're there today. But I think as you get into more complex products, you need that. That's where the producer should be focused. And I think, I don't know if you're going to, just to circle back to the conversation we had before, where Adam, you asked me about the producers and those types of models. It's the producer model works if it has that support to take care of all this other stuff for them, and then gives them the tools they need to be able to play in that space. That's where the producer model, in my view, works, and that's the future of the producer model. So that they're just dealing with medium-sized accounts that are growing. They're boots on the ground. They're never in the office. They're out seeing. They're developing. They're building relationships in that space, right? That's the piece on that side. So when you look at people and talent, that person is very different than someone who's going to, who's happy being on the phone and answering calls, or someone in your, wherever else in your organization, right? So getting the right mix of people and developing that talent is critical, I think, for success in the future.
Thanks, Dario. I also want to say thanks to IFS Premium Finance, our premier sponsor, as well as the Excalibur Read to Ride program. Thank you very much.
Is retention important to your brokerage? Of course it is. That's why at IFS, we have a cancellation prevention process. Want more details? Give us a call. I know you don't always use a premium finance company, but when you do, you should use IFS. Cheers.